Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about 1998's Small Soldiers and its brand new 4K Steelbook that just came out from Paramount. But before we get into that, I always like to give a quick film review, so if you don't want to know anything about the film Small Soldiers and you're just here for that 4K Blu-ray review, you guys can skip ahead to that right now. So back in 1998, Joe Dante, one of our great underappreciated directors, gave us Small Soldiers, and this movie was a huge deal for me back in 1998. I remember the Burger King toy tie-in. I was anticipating this film like crazy. I saw it in theaters when it came out on VHS. I had to own it. But for some reason, maybe like 25 years, maybe even more, I haven't seen Small Soldiers. I don't know what it is. I wore the hell out of this VHS when I was a kid. I had some of these toys, but I just never went back to the film. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. Just something about this movie never made me run back to it, despite the fact I have a huge amount of nostalgia tied into this film. But hey, I picked up the new 4K Blu-ray, I watched it again, and you know what? This movie holds up really, really well. It was actually a box office failure back in the day. It had a budget of $40 million. It made only $70 million at the box office. People kind of complained about the tone of this movie. I don't know if they were too into the violence, but if you were a 90s kid, this really fits right into 1998 and other movies of the time. The score to this movie is done by Jerry Goldsmith. I can see what people are talking about. It can feel very like heartwarming and light at points, and then it can feel a little bit dark at points, but I really do think that overall it's light and funny and good-natured. I can see the complaints, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with them. The movie stars Gregory Smith as Alan, a young kid, a bad kid at that, who apparently got kicked out of 2 schools. I don't see it. Feel like, he seems too nice for that kind of thing, but hey, it is a movie. So he's going to a new school now. He lives next door to Phil Hartman's family. This is Phil Hartman's last film, actually. Came out 2 months after he had already passed away. R.I.P. Phil Hartman. He is one of our greats. We lost a good one. He plays a very similar role to this as a neighbor in Jingle All the Way in 1996, but he's not as much of a dick in this movie. His neighbors don't really like him because he's really into, audio and visual stuff. He's clearly a movie buff. He's got this brand new TV and sound system. I don't think he really knows what he's talking about, but he still is into this kind of stuff. His neighbors don't like the fact that, he's got this big, ugly satellite dish. He has a problem with his neighbor, Kevin Dunn, who is the father, Alan, because of the satellite dish and cutting his tree down. Me, personally, if my neighbor wants to cut down any of my trees, go for it. It's very, very expensive, so I'm not too sure what Kevin Dunn's getting upset about. It's just obviously these two have a rivalry. Phil Hartman's daughter is Kirsten Dunst. She was a pretty big child actor of the 1990s. Between this and Jumanji, which have very similar tones, and both movies have a lot of nostalgia for me from the 1990s. So Kirsten Dunst, when she eventually ended up in Spider-Man, I already knew who she was big time. It's funny though, there's a very similar scene in this movie compared to Spider-Man. Instead of Tobey Maguire, it's Gregory Smith on the curb watching as Kirsten Dunst rides off with the more hotshot. In this case, it's an older guy with a motorcycle, and she only sees older guys exclusively. But it's the exact same scene from 2002 Spider-Man, so I thought that was pretty funny. She's always just been that like hot, cool chick, so of course she's not going to end up with Gregory Smith. She's going to go outside of her age, but she learns to appreciate Gregory Smith as the movie goes on, appreciate Alan, and kind of get along more with what he's going for. And of course, he ends up getting these toys from Dick Miller, who gives them to him, and he's going to sell them overnight to help the store make some money. But of course, these toys come to life. The Gorgonites and the Commando Elite. The main Commando Elite is voiced by Tommy Lee Jones. The main Gorgonite is voiced by Frank Langella. 2 great actors doing great voice performances, in my opinion. Dennis Leary's company. Dennis Leary is great in this movie as well. He gets a little moment to do his shtick from the 1990s of his stand-up. But he plays this corporate boss. He wants to sell toys, and he wants toys that can do the real thing, not just be an ad. Like, do what they could do in the ads in real life. So of course, the 2 guys who made the toys are like, okay, all right. And one of the guys gets the idea, like, let's get some chips. And unfortunately, they end up with some chips that they're supposed to go to the Department of Defense. How a toy company is able to get them is beyond me. I feel like there should have been some stopgaps in between to prevent this from happening, but it didn't. So of course, these toys end up with the best chips possible of the time in 1998. Chips that I don't think are still even possible in 2025, despite the fact we do have artificial intelligence. But they keep saying, oh, they're learning. Well, yeah, of course, it's AI in there. They don't say directly AI. They make sure not to say it. But I just don't think in 1998 they just had a full grasp on what the reality of what this kind of stuff was, because that's it. These toys are programmed to fight each other. You know, the Gorgonites, they're really on the run. They know that the Commando Elite are the ones that are going to kill them, so they're just really good at hiding. And it's great. It's just really about the war between these toys. They don't realize, I mean, they do realize they're toys, but the Commando Elite are going to kill the Gorgonites no matter what, and this just starts a war between the two of them. But because they're toys, it's between the two neighboring houses, and all of this damage happens. Everything that you can imagine happens. It's a really fun 1990s movie. A long sequence, actually, in the war sequences between this. Tommy Lee Jones is banging out great one-liners. I love it. There's even a scene where he's doing Patton. Even starts off the same way as Patton. I absolutely love that, and believe me, I did not recognize that in 1998.
Soldiers, no poor sap ever won a war by dying for his country.
There's a lot of stuff in this movie I didn't recognize in 1998 when I was watching it as a kid that I can recognize and appreciate now. This movie clearly is very similar in the same exact vein as Gremlins, and obviously Joe Dante knew that. He even slips in the password being Gizmo. You know, come on, it's a throwback. But it's structured very similar to that. And it's not necessarily structured very similar to how Matinee was in the early 1990s. This does feel like a spiritual successor to what Gremlins was for a new generation, for the 90s kids, and I ate that shit up in the late 1990s. I absolutely loved it. Why I didn't run back to it, I don't know. I still had a blast rewatching this last night. Had a smile on my face. It's amazing how things started coming right back to me from that era. I mean, like I said, I felt a huge amount of nostalgia, so I had a shit-eating grin the entire time. Had an absolute blast revisiting. Now, trying to turn off my nostalgia and look at this through a critical lens, I could see some of the flaws. Again, it's it's mostly directed at kids, this kind of movie, so I could see people, maybe parents, being a little upset at the time. Again, my parents didn't care, so it's not really a big deal, but I can understand that. Maybe Gregory Smith isn't the best lead actor, but I think he's doing a good enough job, so I don't really have too many complaints, and I think they were a little too harsh on this movie. Is it a 10 out of 10 film, a film that's going to win awards? No, but this is still a really fun watch, and it really does feel like the kind of movie you watch in the summer, so I can recommend Small Soldiers any which way, even if you don't want to watch this new Paramount 4K Steelbook that we're going to talk about right now.
Major Chip Hazard reporting for duty, sir.
Wow, voice.
And here it is, Small Soldiers on 4K Steelbook from Paramount. They only gave us the Steelbook option this time around, and this is a perfect illustration of why Paramount, I don't understand. They are the most inconsistent company out there. We've talked about movies like Clueless being just a terrible 4K Blu-ray release, a lazy 4K Blu-ray release, Tommy Boy being a very lazy 4K Blu-ray release with no effort put into it, and then you get movies like Galaxy Quest, which they clearly sprung for all the bells and whistles and is a great 4K Blu-ray release. Well, this one falls more in line with Galaxy Quest, and this is actually one of the good Paramount releases, starting right away with the great packaging that speaks to me. I love it when it's a very colorful steelbook. Not everybody is into this, I get that, but I really love the steelbook, and I saw it right away, and I was like, I have to kind of get that one. I'm not even really a big steelbook guy, but I truly did like the design of it, and it stuck out to me to where I had to grab it. It is a Paramount release, so that means you get one 4K Blu-ray, and you get the previously released Blu-ray right there in blue. They are not going to go for that individual artwork, and again, that Blu-ray is just the previously released Blu-ray, so don't expect the new scan to be downgraded to 1080p. You're not going to get that here. All of your extras are going to be on that Blu-ray as well, because they didn't spring for anything new. That's kind of the norm now. The previously released extras, though, there is an old making of, which was really just one of those old making ofs where it was publicity for the film, so it's not necessarily going to give you anything that, isn't going to praise the film as it is. They're not going to look at any of the negatives. You got actors saying, oh, this is probably one of the most fun times I've ever had on a film. Of course it is, because you're on the film right now. So that I don't really take too seriously. And then, you get the trailer, you get some bloopers, and that's really it. Nothing new, which again, as we expected. And this is the kind of movie that was kind of considered a failure. So I don't expect, Joe Dante or anyone to have given interviews at the time, or, where they sprung for the DVD release, giving us all interviews, because the movie was kind of considered a failure, so it's just Paramount kind of putting it out there and for the fans of the film. But they really did go all out in other areas. Now, the audio is the same. It's a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1, or at least I'm pretty sure it's the same exact one. Either way, or it's a very good DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. It's got a lot of punch to it. You really do feel your surround sound. You can feel the audio moving around, which surprised me. going from like left to right. Didn't expect that. You know, it kind of had the punch of a Dolby Atmos track without being a Dolby Atmos track, so it doesn't feel like as atmospheric, but it's still very well done. There's a lot of great action sequences in this film, so it really does stand out. I was very, very impressed with that. You know, especially since Paramount has like reused old audio and sometimes to mix results. This time, if they did use the same audio, it's very, very impressive, and it's not an audio track that I feel like needs to be upgraded. So I was very impressed with it. It definitely fits the movie very well. Everything comes in crisp and clear, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. You can set your volume at one volume, so I was pretty impressed. That was a very good DTS HD track. Now, the visuals. This is where you're going to see the most noticeable and biggest upgrade, and really is the huge selling point for this, because the previously released Blu-ray, like I said, I hadn't seen this since VHS, so for me, this was going to be a huge upgrade regardless, because I was saying to my wife, the last time I watched this was definitely on a 13-inch TV that I had in my bedroom, and it compares nothing to the 77-inch OLED that I have in my living room now. So it was going to be a night and day difference for me regardless. But when you compare that previously released Blu-ray, and if you have that Blu-ray, that's night and day, because that Blu-ray is very muted, very flat. It's not very colorful. And when you upgrade to 4K Blu-ray, I mean, the HDR is just doing incredible work here. It brightens everything up while also making everything feel more natural. You know, obviously this is like a combination of computer generated images and also Stan Winston effects. So like the CGI, it's not as noticeably bad as like movies of that era, because they're doing a bunch of different things. In fact, I would say that the CGI holds up very, very well, but that's of course combining it with regular practical effects. And if studios take the time, then Joe Dante is clearly somebody who wanted to take the time to make sure this stuff looked as good as it possibly can. That gives us great source material, and that's why we end up with a great 4K Blu-ray here. The visuals are absolutely insane. I would say even like 10 out of 10 visuals blew me away, and this comes from Paramount. Paramount, who's given us some of the worst visuals. Like, more than likely, my worst 4K Blu-ray release of the year will be a Paramount release, but yet this 4K Steelbook from Paramount just impressed the hell out of me every which way. You know, they gave us great packaging. Yes, they didn't give us good extras like I would hope and like I asked for, but like we talked last week when it comes to Billy Madison. Billy Madison is one of the more popular 90s comedies. It's grown into a huge cult following. The people love Billy Madison. That deserved more extras. Small Soldiers, it's got a little bit of a cult following, but overall, people don't necessarily think about Small Soldiers that much. Even when they bring up Joe Dante, that's probably like the 6th or 7th movie they bring up. So not everyone loves Small Soldiers, so I can't really be too much of a curmudgeon when it comes to the extras on Small Soldiers. So that's really like the biggest negative, but in this case, it's not the world's biggest negative, because everything else is great. The audio is also phenomenal, even though I don't think it's a brand new audio track. It's just a very good, well-mixed audio track. And then the visuals are incredible. So this is something I can highly recommend. If it ever gets a standard release and you want to save some money, I can recommend that. I don't know if the Steelbook is still available. I bought it from Amazon. It even got delayed a week, which is to be expected. It is Amazon. The ironic thing is Dick Miller in this movie says that in the future, all the world is going to be run by one company. Well, what do we run by, about like 3 or 4? So he wasn't that far off. We might end up with one, and it might be Amazon. So I just thought that was pretty funny that I'm getting this movie from Amazon. A little ironic in my opinion. But anyway, this 4K Blu-ray is great. If I was going to give it a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one a very solid 8 out of 10. But anyway, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships, guys, so if you want to become a friend of the channel and get all the videos early when I'm done editing them, you can do that. You can even bump it up to the producers tier, where you'll be entered into our monthly physical media giveaway. You can do that as well, and that's where you're going to find Ben Rondo, John Doe Juggalo, and Harvey Scott. Or you can even bump it up to the channel directors, where, you know, you can get your own choice review each and every single month. And that's where you're going to find Uncle V, Kevin Kruger, Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, Nicholas Head, and Kevin Kruger. Or you can even bump it up to the channel bankroll members like Mr. Smelly Potato, and get everything else that everybody else gets. But then every other month, you also get your own video here on the channel. And of course, you are really helping me grow the channel. The support means so much to me. Thank you to all my channel members, all of you guys. I really, truly appreciate it. But of course, if you have no money to throw my way, I don't mind at all. I just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.